Welcome to Learning Impact On Demand 2020, Solutions for Highly Effective Digital Teaching and Learning in response to the accelerated move to remote education. At IMS, we believe in the power of dynamic collaboration as a catalyst for digital innovation and transformation in education. In this spirit, we're bringing together leaders in our community, representing top learning institutions and edtech suppliers, to share knowledge and ideas for reimagining the educational experience and exploring new opportunities for shaping the future of teaching and learning.
Hi everyone, my name is Suzanne Carbonaro and I'm the Director of Academic Partnerships here at AEFIS. And this is how we built this, the role of micro-credentials in the wave of shifting higher education learner demographics. Today we have some expertise in the form of panelists and partners of AEFIS who are going to share out some of their knowledge and skills around the various micro-credential processes that they might have on their campus. AEFIS is a powerful assessment management software that helps higher education institutions drive measurable results, provide transparency, enable collaboration, and engages students throughout their lifelong learning journey with Comprehensive Learner Record, CLR. Just as an overview, the higher education transcript codified around courses, credits, and grades is now becoming more expressive, documenting more explicitly what has been learned, acquired, and practiced. Shifts in the delivery of post-secondary education are in full gear, and the focus on outcomes and skills are at the forefront, helping to usher in changes in the way higher education delivers instruction. Comprehensive Learner Record, CLR, is at that epicenter of the change, helping to unpack evidence of learning and making it more explicit and meaningful to students, employers, and institutions. Stakeholders who use CLR as a vehicle for learning in real time and an ecosystem of skills that employers value are providing valuable opportunities to share knowledge, skills, and abilities with a greater audience. I want you to listen in to these university leaders as they discuss their initiatives around Comprehensive Learner Record at their institution. Some of the takeaways, and what we're calling this is how we built this. This is based off of the NPR, How I Built This series, which really focuses on the journey of innovators and entrepreneurs. And that's who you have in front of you. These are the folks that are the movers and the shakers at the university and really thinking at a high level. And so you can see there's a number of takeaways that I hope that today's discussion unpacks for you, including what that future of micro-credentials can look like post-COVID-19 and how universities are responding through various delivery methods for their instruction. So just to kind of calibrate us on some best practices, in higher education, we've moved across the trajectory from compliance and posting of just favorable outcomes and results from assessment to more of a nuanced, tailored framework for communicating outcomes, improvements in a comprehensive, very student-focused and culturally responsive way. This trajectory has not, moved at a sprint's pace, right? And different institutions are at different, maybe stops along this continuum. And I'm happy to say that the folks that are in front of us today have really stepped up as far as being innovators on their campus. I'd like to start off with Scott over at the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Thank you, Suzanne. I've been involved with micro-credentials in two ways. First, we have been working together on a long-term strategy, which we refer to as One Badger. And it's the thought process of capturing learning at all phases of the learner's learning journey. By whether that be a pre-college program, a youth program, something that prepares them for non-credit offerings, into maybe more of a credentialed credit degree program, and then into their extended learning beyond their degree work for that lifelong learning aspect. So we've been tailoring that strategy and formalizing that. The second area that I've been involved with is in reference to, we've been working with policy development. When we think about policy, I say small p. How do we help our school, college, department partners create badges and document the learning outcomes as well as the assessment, and what types of tools and systems do we have in place? The real thought behind that process and policy is the ability to then capture that digital badge, digital credential, and be able to bring that together into the comprehensive learner record, which we refer to as one badger. So we've done some work in the policy development. Fortunately, as many of my panelist partners will say, COVID has put a little bit slowdown for us on that. But we're also looking to then move into how might we think about micro-credentials in our credit spaces, and how does that reflect on the traditional transcript or not, and how might that roll up into a comprehensive learner record. So lots of exciting, cool stuff going on in this space, and I'm very lucky as the university registrar to kind of be at that hub of the academic enterprise, the student enterprise, and technology, and how we support and partner with our campus partners on this.
Great, thank you, Scott. And let's move over to Sherri over at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County.
Yeah, hi, Suzanne. Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm Sherri Braxton. I'm the Senior Director of Instructional Technology at Umbc. I lead all of the micro-credentialing initiatives. I work with the faculty, staff, and our administration, from the design to the implementation and awarding of the badges. And we are now working on piloting a comprehensive learner record, and we're going to be using AEFIS and partnering with Suzanne and her partners there. So we're looking forward to that.
Thanks, Sherri. And Susan over at Messiah University.
Hi, I'm Susan Donat. I'm the Director of Curriculum and the Assistant Director of Assessment at Messiah University. And I have been uniquely positioned because we are trying to move several different initiatives into the credentialing world. We're looking at new certificates for our adult degree program and our traditional undergraduate program. We're also looking to partner with our student affairs programs to create badges for their learning outcomes for that area of our campus experience. And then we also have a required experiential learning graduation requirement, and we're looking to turn that into a badge as well. So my position is really to get all of the players to the table and to make sure that the way in which we move this forward, that we're consistent across all areas, that we have all players on board, and that we have the buy-in from the school dean and the various campus offices to make sure that this works well.
Well, thank you, everybody. And let's move into some of these questions and see your perspectives on these. First off, what are some of your different initiatives? I know you gave like an introduction that provided some insight, but I guess I'm really interested in, is there one or two that you want to describe a little bit more, and maybe what adoption phase best describes that initiative? Why don't we start over with Susan?
Sure. So at Messiah University, we have several adult degree completion programs that have embedded certificates within them. And we're in the process right now, because we've been working with AEFIS, all of our assessment of student learning is in AEFIS, so we have all of the curriculum mapped. We know the learning outcomes, we know the signature measures of student learning. And so we have the structure already in place and built and ready to go. And where we are now is trying to engage with the various school deans to make sure they understand what a public-facing CLR would look like, and then to make sure that the program directors understand how to communicate its availability to students. And we're anticipating that that process is going to be interesting, especially in this day and age with COVID. It's harder to get people in the room and focused right now. So we're looking at using a model of sustained change to keep the ball rolling forward, so we're not losing any momentum, but we're also trying to engage our stakeholders in ways that give them voice at this early period of adoption.
Great. Thank you, Susan. I want to kind of move over to Sherri, who might have moved a little bit in a different direction, or maybe even has some other things in place that with regards to your initiatives, Sherri.
Sure, Suzanne. So we are doing micro-credentialing for both faculty and students. I should say for faculty, students, and staff. And just briefly, for faculty, mostly it's around professional development, whether it's the faculty who've gone through our training to put their courses online, to being ambassadors to help other faculty learn how to use technology. Staff, professional development programs that existed, we ended up taking those and badging those, things on like diversity, leadership, and supervision that they would get through our workplace and wellness office. But our larger badging initiatives have been around students, whether it's been preparing them for financial literacy and how to manage their bank accounts, to skilled training that happens on campus through our new media studio, through research preparation for undergraduate researchers. Our two major badging initiatives have been around badging for career-ready skills with employers through the system of Maryland. Those career-ready skills are like collaboration, communication, critical thinking, identifying where those happen in either curricular or co-curricular activities, and then mapping those activities to the badging requirements. Our most recent project is around the Greater Washington Partnership, which is an alliance of CEOs in the Baltimore-Richmond corridor who are looking to increase the number of qualified candidates in the region who have digital technology fluency. And so they partner with institutions in the area, businesses like Amazon, Under Armour, and Northrop Grumman, and they've identified these knowledge, skills, and abilities that they want these candidates to have. So we're developing credentials around those competencies related to cybersecurity, data analytics, AI, and machine learning. And we're going to be building those competencies into badges which stack to a credential, and we're going to be using AEFIS for the mapping process and all the way through the awarding of the CLRs.
Thank you so much, Sherri. And over to Scott at University of Wisconsin, Madison.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. So we're at a little bit different stage than my partner panelists here. UW-Madison is a Research One traditional undergrad institution, but we know that lifelong learners desire a way to broadcast and create a digital record of achievement. And so how do we think about, in addition to those formal degrees, how might we provide an opportunity for students to showcase the competencies or their competencies with credentials that symbolize their skills, their accomplishments, and those learning outcomes? We also know corporate partners are looking for specific skills. And so how do we create those digital credentials to help our students in those areas and contextualize what they've been able to learn? We've actually, and when I say we're a little bit different spaces, we've focused on setting up the policy and setting up some of the underlying infrastructure for how we would support some of those programs and departments with creating these micro-credentials. Our Division of Continuing Studies, who is a partner with the Office of the Registrar, our Academic Planning Institutional Research at our institution, have all really come together in developing that policy. And then we've also wanted to do that from a consistency standpoint. As you can imagine, we're a very decentralized, distributed, complex institution, and I love it. And I think it's great to see us have some consistency around what those badges are, how do we capture the outcomes, capture assessment, et cetera. And so we're at that very foundational building block stage, I think is the best way to put it.
Thank you so much, Scott, and bringing that other perspective of an R1 university into the mix. Of course, with innovation come challenges. You make it sound so easy, all three of you. What are some of the challenges you are experiencing, and how are you overcoming those? So, whoever would like to answer that first, I would throw that out to you.
Hi, Suzanne. So I would say the most challenging part of building these credentials, especially those that are related to curricular and co-curricular experiences, is doing the mapping of the skills and competencies against those different activities so that we can build that catalog of pathways that students can achieve these credentials and then be able to carry those forward throughout lots of programs. So that takes faculty really being engaged in the mapping of their learning outcomes to the knowledge, skills, and abilities that we define for the badges. And in some cases requires them even rethinking their courses based on what they were doing prior and redesigning those. So getting the buy-in for people to participate at that level is a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know Sherri, just as a follow-up, you and I have talked through a specific type of a continuum that really gets at that. And, you know, I think, you know, having a process in place, knowing and understanding where faculty are coming from in addressing these concerns are really critical, and probably tackle that challenge head on. I don't know if you want to add anything to that as well before I move on.
Yeah, yes. So the faculty, also administration, and making sure they understand the value to the institution and going through this process. And then students, you know, making sure they're aware of, okay, what's this going to buy me? What's the so whatness for me? You know, how am I going to benefit at the end if I go through what it takes to earn these different credentials and to have this record? So it's all of that communication and training and awareness, really. Marketing, all of those things of this very new way of credentialing that's important to outreach to everyone.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. The messaging is so important, and I know Susan could speak to that a little bit with regards to the challenges. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you know, messaging we know is really important, and getting internal sort of buy-in or ownership around this. Susan, you want to talk a little bit about the challenges you're facing?
Sure, I do. We are in the process of doing the very labor-intensive aspect of what we would call a listening tour. We know that every area on campus will have very different concerns based off of what currently is on their plate. For some areas, again, we've got our objectives and our outcomes and our assignments. All of those things are nailed down, which is great. But you're asking faculty and program directors and school deans to provide buy-in for yet one more initiative. And initiative fatigue is a really real thing. So what we're trying to do right now is to roll this out in such a way that people feel, first of all, that they were consulted, that their concerns were listened to, and that we moved our course based off of concerns to make sure that we're demonstrating our caring for our campus community, especially during a time of such anxiety and challenge. So we want to make sure that we're really listening carefully to how that's playing out in their world. For some faculty, it will be just an issue of how do we communicate this to students? How do we teach students how to use this wonderful tool? For other people, it will be help us understand the validity of why we need this in addition to our existing credentials that are controlled by the registrar's office. So it's just trying to come on and get people all on that common vision, and to develop vision is a real iterative process. It takes multiple trips through the governance process till everybody feels comfortable with the package you're trying to present. And even though this isn't something that impacts all of campus, it has the potential to grow to all of the campus. So we really want to make sure we're hearing voices from multiple disciplines and multiple support positions on campus.
Yeah, and that segues really nicely to you, Scott. I mean, who's kind of like the keeper of records. What are some of the challenges you're experiencing from the registrar's perspective?
So first, I have to say, Susan, I don't control anything at Madison. So I'd love to meet my counterpart at your institution, because that sounds interesting. All kidding aside, no, Susan and Sherri have provided some great challenges that we've experienced too. I think it's this balance of, you know, as an accredited university with established governance processes for the checks and balances, balance that with the kind of innovative local expertise that I think comes with these micro-credentials. What is the right small g governance in that space? Because we've never worked there. And I think we've been really trying to work through how we would do that. And we've done not as much listening tours as it sounds as Susan. We will do that. That's one challenge. The other piece is, as you can imagine, when you're on a huge campus, these folks in the local departments and the faculty, they can fly. and they can fly fast. And in these spaces where we're exploring this and developing infrastructure to help support them here, how do we show them the value of pausing and thinking about through the policy, the infrastructure, how does it roll up to a comprehensive learner record? Why is that valuable to students or learners? And so I think that ebb and flow or that natural good rub of we need to move quick, but we also need to have policy is a challenge that we face, and we face that in many conversations. The final thing I'll say is that, and we have to be real, right? We have to be real. With COVID-19, we have to move our whole credit enterprise of, 8,000 courses or 8,000 sections and 3,500 courses across 200 departments. To focus time and energy in this space, while it's very important, it's just about priorities. And I think while we'd love to move, we just don't have that space, and that's a challenge for us.
So Scott, I'm going to stick with you for a second because, maybe, you're focusing on, you've changed maybe some priorities and whatnot. But as things, start to maybe even out, what do you think are some of your next steps to scaling micro-credentials? How does it now become more of an initiative for University of Wisconsin-Madison amidst COVID-19, the future of learning and what that's going to look like? What are your plans? What does the scaling look like?
Yeah, I think for us, it's defining, what we want to do in both the non-credit and the credit space. What's the source of truth? How do we document the learning outcomes? What are the assessments? How do we use our great partners at AEFIS to help us through that, help us navigate that? How do we use the other tool sets that are in this ecosystem? And then how do we think about this as a true student digital ecosystem and bringing all these pieces together? When we think about the comprehensive learner record, it's really how do these things roll up? And then once we can figure out that kind of underlying piece to it, it's how do we build that engagement layer so that a student that's engaging with the University of Wisconsin-Madison has that consistent look and feel. And from kind of that user-centric design, we can think about how they engage with us across these different learning opportunities. So I think those are for us the next steps. Is really that non-credit, and then how does this start to but how does he start to develop this into the credit world? And I think, as Susan pointed out, it's convincing those faculty of the importance of these credentials, in working in partnership with our business and corporate partners, and then figuring out a way to document that and not make it feel like this is just one more initiative. So those are things I think we'll see us going forward with.
Yeah, Sherri, I mean, I think that you've probably had maybe a different road, but there's definitely a role for micro-credentials at UMBC. So, what does it look like from the vantage point of when it is a role, when it is initiative? How do you scale that?
Yeah, so originally, when we started talking about this, we're talking about how do you launch these things? Well, the first thing you need to do before you even think about scaling is getting people to buy in. And the easiest thing to do is find the lowest hanging fruit. And that's what we did. We found programs where they're already offering certificates, where there was already an assessment to prove mastery. And we put a credential on them. And we showed the value of not just having that title, but what can travel along with it and what you can share with employers, that metadata, right? And so people started seeing the value of having those credentials. In scaling, what we've been able to do is we have my office that is the central holder of the digital credentialing initiatives. We have made it so that people, if they're interested, can fill out a form, and it gets them to start to talk about all of those elements of the badge they need to define. Then we can meet with them, and we give them the ownership of defining all those things, right? And then we just work with them and bring them back to my office to implement. In order to scale anything like this, you have to have the central place for the consistency to happen, but then be able to give the ownership to those people who are actually doing the assessments and the defining of the badges.
What does this look like at Messiah, Susan?
At Messiah, it's an interesting place right now. So we're trying again to do sustained change rather than yet another initiative that is a flash and then dies. We really want to connect this and leverage this to other success stories on campus. So at Messiah right now, we're testing it out in 3 different arenas, which hopefully will go well as the semester progresses. And then we'll learn from those experiences and find out how we can replicate it in similar areas, but customize it to serve the needs of those areas. So we'll work with our student affairs people, and then we'll take it to another area of student affairs or another area of the initiative, the experiential initiative. And we're going to try to keep learning from the past, but then build it in such a way that we leverage it to existing processes. That's one of the ways in which we've been really successful with our assessment work, is we embed assessment within the existing governance process. We embed it within other existing workflows so that it isn't yet another thing somebody has to do or yet another thing that someone else has to manage. So that's where we'll be exploring this year, is how do we connect this to people on campus and processes on campus so that we can use a distributed leadership to keep it moving forward and not have the flash and the dying out.
Yeah, and you know what? You brought up some really great points, which brings us to, the final question about launching, right? And there were some definite tips in all of your answers to the question about scaling. If we could unpack for folks watching this, what are some of the most important tips that you could share when an institution is looking to launch a micro-credentialing program? Could you list out some, and Susan, maybe just unpack a couple that you kind of had in that answer, and then we'll move along.
Sure. I think first and foremost is knowing your audience, doing a really deep listening to what their areas that they're proud of and where they are experiencing friction and how they see the world and see their discipline within the world, so that you can cast the vision in a way that resonates with them. That's one aspect. Another aspect would be, again, that linking so that you get lasting change. Where can I find places that things are working well? How do I piggyback on those to make sure that this can actually endure over time and not be this one moment in time that, oh yeah, one initiative that got dropped after a time because nobody became the champion of it. And again, that distributed leadership, if you have multiple campus leaders on your campus that are saying, hey, this is a really great way to serve students, you're going to get better buy-in, and you're going to continue to get new vision and enthusiasm for that vision as you distribute how you're leading this area.
Well, I couldn't agree more with everything that Susan said. The buy-in across campus at the different levels is key. If you do start the launch and you get a badge underway and you've got a real faculty champion who's been working that, have them present on it. I always keep saying this, but messaging, we have a portal, we post stories, we let people know the success that's being felt. Students, we show them the benefit by adding another aspects to the badging completion that they might like. For example, our professionalism badge, with it came a LinkedIn photo, right, for their profile. They get reverse career fair priorities. So just doing things that bring that attention to the effort in a positive light, and then letting those different constituents talk about the value that they have found in participating and earning the badges. And from there, people start to hear, hey, can I do this for my program? It's really getting those first 2 successes that then can, make their way through the groundswell on their own as people learn about those initiatives.
And Scott, I want you to take it from a resource perspective as well. Like, if you can think about like some of the tips, what resources would be necessary to launch as well?
Yeah, I think I don't know if I fully know what resources. I think what I would share or what I would offer is being able to, as as was shared earlier, striking that balance between what can be provided centrally as resources and what is needed at the department level. I mean, how might we make I always say as the registrar, is how might we make our school college partners' jobs easier? And I think that's the thing. We can find our champions, we can find success stories. We want to highlight those, develop those collaborations and partnerships, but we also need to have, policies and processes and resources that don't make this too cumbersome, because I think some of those, we have one initiative and it was too much work to make it successful. So how do we think about bringing that together and striking that balance between what resources can be provided and what needs to be done more locally? I think is the right tip that I would look at. And that's just working through at your institution. That's institutional context. You have to contextualize that at your institution. It's different for all of us.
Thank you so much for adding that little addition to my question about launching a micro-credential program, because I think, it's important to have leadership behind you, to have the resources available so that, you can have those champions. It feeds those champions for these types of programs. I want to thank Scott from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, Sherri over at University of Maryland, Baltimore campus, as well as Susan over at Messiah University's. We couldn't be AEFIS if we didn't have the partnership in every way that we have with these innovators of micro-credential programs, of assessment, of developing processes for sustainability amidst COVID-19, prior to, and wherever our new normal goes. I want to add also that we do have a communities of practice where we have folks like our panelists today come together in looking at different problems and challenges as well as innovations. And it's AEFIS Academy, where folks can come together to learn, teach, collaborate, and innovate. And it's an opportunity, a free resource for folks to jump into by going to aefisacademy.org to learn more about processes to be AEFISable potentially on your campus. Thank you very much for joining us here today, and we look forward to talking with you in the future.